I want to show you how to set up an artist studio so that you don't have glare all over your painting when you're trying to work, and that you have good quality light. That's the essential thing. The first thing is you want to mount your light as high as possible. If your light is down low, you're going to get uneven distribution of light on your painting, especially if you're doing a large painting. I mean, you can imagine if your light was here, now the top of your painting is getting twice as much light as the bottom. And that's going to be exaggerated if you have low ceilings and if you're working on large paintings. So we want the light as high as possible. If you've got a fixture that hangs down into the room, you need to get rid of the fixture and mount your lights way up high. The higher the better. The next thing you want to do is you need to have your easel relative to your light at 35 degrees. And let me show you how to measure that. So what I'm doing is I'm holding this right angle right on a painting on my easel, and I'm putting it right at my line of sight. In other words, this part right here should be right where your eyes are as you're sitting at your easel. And that's where I'm measuring the angle from. So I'm going to put this here, and you could use a piece of paper with one corner folded down to create a 45-degree angle. But what we're going to do is we're going to find 45, which is right in the middle. So there's 45 degrees, and there's 35 degrees. Notice my stick is pointing straight at my light. Okay, so this is good, or this is good. It doesn't have to be exactly. 30 degrees is probably okay, and 40 is getting, if it gets too far behind you, if you're down at 45, then your light is too far behind you as you sit at your easel. The main reason you don't want your light, your studio light, to be too far back behind you is because if it's too far back, you're going to get glare up at the top of your painting. If it's too far above you, straight up, then you're not going to get enough light on your painting. So 35 degrees is about right. The other thing you have to consider is that you don't want a big bright wall behind you or a bright window behind you, because that's going to also put glare all over your painting. And if there's glare all over your painting, you're not going to be able to see into the dark shadows and be able to see any detail. If I'm trying to paint in this dark area here and there's glare, I'm not going to be able to see this dark green leaf. So that's why it's so important. The difference between that and looking at this with glare is huge. So that's why it's so important to eliminate all the glare. So the only other thing to consider is that you don't want a big bright window behind you just because it's distracting. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. No glare is going to come from the other side of your painting, but you just don't want a big bright window. The other thing, and this is really important, is you want your lights to be 5000 K. That is a color temperature. 2000 is very orange, very yellow. 3000 is more toward the yellow spectrum. 6000 is more toward the blue. But 5000 to 5200 K, 5000 Kelvin, is just about white balanced light. So you have to make sure that your bulbs are white balanced light, or you're not going to be able to see all the color that you need to. And the reason where we're going with all this is the problem is that the old masters, when they painted, they typically would have a northern light, which was daylight coming through, a ceiling light or real high up, and then the rest of their room was dark, and the light source was on the outside. Today what we have is we have our lights inside the room lighting up all the walls and creating glare. So that's why we have to take some measures in order to make sure that we're not getting glare all over our paint. The very last thing to consider, and this is not as critical, but if you're looking at a wet palette sitting in front of you, if you're getting a whole bunch of glare on your palette, it's coming from just on the other side. It's reflecting, so if you have a window or a bright wall on the other side of your palette table, then you're going to get some glare on your palette table. And that's not as big of a deal as on your painting, but it's just something to consider. So you may want to consider hanging some dark fabric on the other side of your easel, or rather on the other side of your palette table.